AITA for breaking up with my boyfriend after he said his ex is still more compatible. I, 26F, dated my now ex-boyfriend Ryan, 27M, for a little over 2 years. We met through mutual friends at a birthday party. I wasn't even planning to go that night. My roommate basically dragged me because she didn't want to show up alone. Ryan was the friend of the birthday girl's boyfriend. He was one of those people who instantly makes everyone comfortable. Funny, attentive, and the kind of guy who actually listens when you talk. I remember our first real conversation pretty clearly. I was standing near the kitchen counter trying to open a bottle of soda that had one of those stupidly tight caps. Ryan walked over and said, "Here, let me try before you break your wrist." I laughed and handed it to him. He opened it easily and handed it back like it was some heroic accomplishment. We ended up talking for almost an hour straight about random things: music, work, travel, dumb childhood stories. What stood out to me was that he didn't act like he was trying to impress me. He just seemed genuinely interested in the conversation. By the end of the night, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. Normally, I hesitate with things like that, but with Ryan, it felt natural. So I said yes. Our first date was at a small cafe near my apartment. He showed up exactly on time, which already put him ahead of half the guys I'd dated before. We talked about our families, work stress, favorite movies, embarrassing teenage phases. After that, we started seeing each other pretty regularly. Within a few weeks, Ryan had established himself as the most thoughtful partner I'd ever had. He remembered tiny details about me. If I mentioned liking a certain snack once, he'd bring it over the next time we hung out. If I said I had a stressful week, he'd show up with takeout and insist we watch a dumb comedy. My friends loved him immediately. My roommate once said, "I'm honestly mad you found someone this nice before me." Even my parents liked him when they met him, which almost never happens. Ryan was calm, supportive, and affectionate without being overwhelming. About 4 months into the relationship, we were cooking dinner at his apartment. Out of nowhere, he said, "You cook a lot better than my ex." I didn't think much of it. People mention exes sometimes. It happens. So I laughed and asked, "Oh yeah? Was she bad at cooking?" Ryan shrugged. "Not bad. Just impatient." Then he quickly changed the subject. At the time, it didn't feel weird. If anything, I took it as a compliment. Over the next few months, though, she started coming up more often. Not constantly, but enough that I noticed. Sometimes it was random comparisons. Like when we went hiking and I struggled, Ryan grinned and said, "My ex would have dragged me up this hill twice by now." Or when we were picking a movie and he said, "My ex hated horror movies. I'm glad you actually like them." None of it sounded malicious. And honestly, most of the time he said it in a neutral way. So I didn't say anything. The first moment that actually made me uncomfortable happened about 8 months into our relationship. We were at dinner with 2 of his friends. At some point, the conversation turned to travel. One of his friends asked if Ryan and I had any trips planned. Ryan said we were thinking about visiting the coast later that year. His friend said, "Didn't you go there with Emily a few years ago?" Emily. That was the first time I heard his ex's name. Ryan laughed and said, "Yeah, that trip was kind of a disaster." His friend asked why. Ryan shrugged. "We fought the whole time. Honestly, the only reason it worked as long as it did was because we were weirdly compatible in some ways." That sentence stuck with me. Weirdly compatible. The way he said it wasn't bitter. If anything, it sounded almost thoughtful. Like he was remembering something complicated rather than something bad. I didn't bring it up then because it felt awkward in front of his friends. But later that night when we were driving home, I asked him about it. "Were you guys together a long time?" I asked. Ryan nodded. "About 3 years. That surprised me. 3 years is a serious relationship." I asked why they broke up. Ryan hesitated for a second before answering. "We wanted different things." That seemed reasonable. So again, I didn't think much of it. Around the 1-year mark, small comparisons started happening more often. At first, they were harmless. If I organized something differently, he'd say, "Emily used to do it that way too." Or if I liked a certain restaurant, he'd mention that his ex used to love it. None of it sounded like he missed her, but there was a pattern forming. It was like she existed in the background of our relationship. One night I jokingly said, "You mention Emily a lot." Ryan looked surprised. "Do I?" "A little." He laughed and said, "Sorry. I guess she was part of my life for a long time." That explanation made sense. So again, I let it go. The moment things shifted happened about a year and a half into the relationship. We were at a small party with some of his coworkers. Everyone had been drinking a bit, and conversations were getting louder and more chaotic. At one point, a group of us were talking about personality tests. One of Ryan's coworkers asked what personality types we were. Ryan looked at me and said, half joking, "You're definitely the opposite of Emily." The table got quiet for a second. I tried to laugh it off. "Oh yeah, is that good or bad?" Ryan shrugged. "Just different." Then he added something that made my stomach twist a little. "Emily and I were basically the same person. That's why we got along so well for so long." It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. There was this weird nostalgia in his voice. I didn't react at the time. But that was the first night I went home and actually thought about how often he brought her up. A few weeks later, I finally asked him directly. We were sitting on the couch watching TV when I said, "Can I ask you something without you thinking I'm being weird?" Ryan paused the show and said, "Sure." I told him that sometimes it felt like he compared me to Emily. He looked genuinely confused. "I don't compare you to her. You mention her a lot." Ryan sighed. "I guess I do sometimes, but it's not like that." "Then what is it like?" I asked. He leaned back against the couch and thought for a moment. "Look, when you date someone for 3 years, they become a reference point for things. It doesn't mean I want to be with her." I nodded slowly. That explanation sounded logical. But then he said something that stuck with me long after the conversation ended. "Honestly, you two are just really different people." I asked what he meant. Ryan shrugged. "Emily and I were super similar. Same hobbies, same personality type, same taste in almost everything." Then he smiled and squeezed my hand. "But you're better for me." At the time, I told myself that should have been reassuring. But for some reason, it didn't feel reassuring. It felt like he was quietly measuring me against someone I'd never even met. For the next few months, things seemed normal again. Ryan was still kind, still attentive, still the guy who brought me coffee when I had early mornings. But the comparisons never completely stopped. They just became more subtle. And every time they happened, that uncomfortable feeling came back. Like I was being graded on a test I didn't know I was taking. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. Then one day, we were alone in his apartment. "So," he said suddenly, "I've been thinking." I braced myself. "You know, me and Emily were really compatible. Like, in ways that I don't think you and I are." I froze. "Wait, what?" He finally looked at me. "I mean, don't get me wrong, you're amazing. But sometimes I feel like she was just more on my wavelength." The words hit me like a punch. "Are you serious? You're really going to sit here and tell me that your ex is more compatible with you than I am?" He shrugged as if it were nothing. "I'm just being honest. Compatibility matters." I felt my chest tighten. For the first time in the relationship, the calm, thoughtful guy I fell for was gone. This was the Ryan who compared me to his ex openly, without considering my feelings. "You know what?" I snapped, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. "I'm done. I won't be with someone who constantly measures me against someone else. You don't respect me. You don't see me for who I am. You see me as a checklist or a replacement." Ryan rolled his eyes. "You're overreacting. I'm just saying what's true." I stood up, pacing. "True? How is it true that your ex is more compatible with you than the person who's standing right in front of you? How is that even acceptable to say?" We started arguing, voices rising. The fights escalated quickly, not just over this one comment, but over months of built-up resentment. Every little comparison he had made replayed in my mind. Every time he mentioned Emily, every joke about her preferences, every subtle reminder that she had qualities I didn't, it all came crashing down. By the end of the fight, it was clear. There was no fixing this. Ryan wasn't going to change, and I couldn't keep giving pieces of myself to someone who couldn't see my worth. I can't do this anymore, I said, tears streaming down my face. You don't respect me, Ryan. I'm leaving. He didn't beg me to stay. He didn't argue further. He just looked annoyed, muttering, "Fine, whatever." I grabbed my coat and left, feeling both heartbroken and liberated at the same time. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a chance to breathe. When I got home, my roommate, Lily, was waiting. She had seen the text I had sent her before leaving. "You did the right thing," she said immediately. "Honestly, Ryan sounds like he's full of himself. You need to move on." "I know," I said, but I felt hollow. 2 years of my life didn't just disappear, and the betrayal of being measured against someone else, it hurt in a way I didn't know how to put into words. Lily gave me a reassuring smile. "Hey, come with me tonight. My brother, Daniel, got a new job here. He wants to celebrate, and I told him I'd bring you too. You need to get out, see people, have fun." I hesitated, but Lily's enthusiasm was contagious, and maybe I needed distraction. Daniel was taller than I expected, and he had this calm, warm energy. When I walked over to congratulate him, he gave me a smile that instantly made me feel comfortable. "Thank you for coming," he said genuinely. We started talking casually about his new job, and then somehow the conversation shifted. I found myself opening up about Ryan, about everything that had just happened. He didn't judge. He didn't roll his eyes or give that condescending, "oh, women drama" vibe. He just listened. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said finally. "You deserve someone who respects you, who sees your worth. You're smart, beautiful, and you shouldn't have to settle for anything less." I blinked. No one had ever said anything like that to me. Not with such sincerity. Not without expecting anything in return. And for some reason, hearing it made me feel a little lighter. The party ended and Lily and I left. I tried to push Daniel out of my mind, telling myself he was just someone nice. But his words kept echoing. I found myself replaying the way he had looked at me, the gentle tone of his voice, the calm patience he had shown. And the more I tried to push it away, the more he lingered in my thoughts. A few weeks later, I went to a small cafe near my apartment just to grab a coffee before work. I didn't expect to see anyone familiar, but there he was, Daniel. He smiled when he saw me. "Hey, fancy meeting you here." We ended up sitting together for over an hour, talking about life, work, and everything in between. He never once brought up Ryan, never once made me feel awkward about my heartbreak. Instead, he just made me feel heard and seen. Every conversation left me feeling lighter, happier. I found myself anticipating the next time I'd run into him. His kindness, the way he complimented me without making it uncomfortable, the way he treated me like I actually mattered, it was intoxicating. Weeks turned into months. Our casual coffee encounters became intentional. Daniel would message me sometimes just to see how my day was going or to suggest grabbing lunch. And slowly, I started liking him, more and more. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was gentle. Finally, one Friday evening, after a long week, Daniel asked me if I wanted to grab dinner with him. Just the two of us. I felt my heart race. "Yes," I said, smiling. And that was it. That was the beginning of something new, something real. We started dating soon after, and every day I felt the difference. He didn't compare me to anyone. He didn't measure me against a past relationship. He treated me like a partner, an equal, someone worth respecting and cherishing. After Ryan, after the heartbreak, I finally understood what it meant to be truly valued in a relationship. Update. After officially starting to date Daniel, life felt different. It wasn't just that I was no longer with Ryan, it was that for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe in a relationship. With Daniel, there was no shadow of a past girlfriend, no subtle comparisons, no constant feeling that I had to prove myself. Every time we spent time together, it was genuine, light, and fulfilling. We would meet up for coffee after work, walk through the city streets discussing everything from movies to our childhood embarrassments, or just sit in a quiet park and talk for hours about life. Daniel had this way of making the ordinary feel extraordinary. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was the little things. How he would notice if I was a little stressed and offer a reassuring squeeze of my hand. He didn't try to fix me or compare me to anyone else. He simply listened, validated my feelings, and made me feel valued. One sunny Saturday, Daniel and I went to a small farmer's market. The market was bustling with people. I was laughing at something Daniel had said. Then I suddenly froze. Ryan was just a few stalls away. My heart skipped, but it wasn't fear. It was more like an annoying ripple of past tension. He looked at me, and I caught his eye for a split second. His expression was unreadable. Then, before I could even process it, he turned and walked out. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. My stomach sank. I hesitated for a second, then opened it. Can we talk? I miss you. Can we get back together? I stared at the screen, disbelief and anger twisting in equal measure. After months of no contact, after the fight where he had so openly said Emily was more compatible with him, he had the audacity to ask me to get back together? I couldn't believe it. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone, but instead I typed, slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. Let me get this straight. After our fight, you never apologized. You treated me like I was replaceable, and even compared me to your ex. And now you think we can get back together? You seriously believe that I would let someone who so blatantly disrespected me back into my life? You clearly have no understanding of respect, love, or decency. I am done. Don't ever contact me again. I sent it and immediately blocked him. For the first time, I felt a rush of liberation, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. It was final. No more lingering doubts. No more anxiety. No more wondering. That evening, I sat across from Daniel at our favorite cafe. I wanted to be honest with him. I didn't want secrets lingering between us, especially something like this. Something happened today. I started taking a deep breath. I told him everything, seeing Ryan, the text, what he said, and how I responded. Daniel listened intently, not interrupting, just holding my hand across the table. When I finished, he gave me a soft smile. I'm glad you told me, he said gently. I felt my heart lift. His understanding, his calm presence, made me realize how different this relationship was. Here was someone who didn't just care about me when it was convenient. He cared about my safety, my dignity, my happiness. A few weeks later, I decided it was time to introduce Daniel to my parents. The meeting went even better than I expected. My parents immediately warmed to him. By the end of the evening, my mother whispered to me, "He's really good for you." I like him, and my father nodded in agreement. Dating Daniel continued to be a joy. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Sometimes we had disagreements, and we both had busy weeks, but the foundation was solid. I no longer worried about comparisons, jealousy, or being undervalued. Every gesture, every word, every touch felt sincere. I found myself laughing more. I slept better. I even enjoyed simple things like grocery shopping or watching a movie on the couch. These ordinary moments, shared with someone who truly respected me, felt extraordinary. Looking back, I realized how much I had grown. With Ryan, I had ignored subtle red flags, hoping love could override basic respect. I had tolerated comparisons, hints, and comments that chipped away at my confidence. With Daniel, I saw the contrast clearly. Respect, patience, kindness, and genuine interest in me as a person. I also learned that closure doesn't always come from confronting someone. It comes from taking control, making choices that honor your worth, and surrounding yourself with people who genuinely value you. Blocking Ryan, telling Daniel the truth, and allowing myself to move forward without lingering doubts was my closure. Now, months into our relationship, I am happier than I ever thought I could be. I chose someone who sees me, values me, and loves me for who I am, not who I'm being compared to. Daniel and I are building something real, steady, and full of trust. And every day, I feel grateful that I trusted myself enough to walk away from someone who couldn't see my value and towards someone who does.